Hi, it's Wallace. At the beginning of December, Danny from the channel Somberhoney created and tagged me in a D&D writing tag. Now, I've been playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons since, I think, 2016, and one of my New Year's resolutions for 2021 is actually to create my own campaign and DM my own campaign. So as soon as she told me about this tag, I knew I had to make this video. If you love to play Dungeons & Dragons, and if you love to write, or if you love both, or if you're curious about either, then keep watching. Now, Danny split the tag up into 2 separate sections, 5 questions each. There's a mostly Dungeons & Dragons related section, and then there's a writing section, but with a D&D twist. Let's jump in. The very first question is, what is your favorite thing about D&D? I love character creation and development. A good dungeon crawl is always fun, but for me, the true heart of D&D are those moments around the table when everyone's in character, the party is talking as a group and making decisions that will serve the desires and goals of the characters, and it's not just about where the next big pile of loot is. Question number 2 is, do you prefer to be a player or do you prefer to DM? Okay, so personally, I've been a player a lot more than I have been a DM, and the campaigns that I have DM'd have all been one-shot, so the story is wrapped up in a single session as opposed to a multi-week or even multi-month campaign. But that being said, I actually do think I prefer to DM. I really love watching my players figure out puzzles I've laid out for them. I love the improv aspect when they decide to befriend an NPC I had no plans or backstory for. And I especially love, I think honestly one of my favorite things about D&D is specifically DMing for new players and slowly watching over the course of the session as they realize how much fun the game is, and that kind of desperate desire to keep playing once the session comes to a close. I think for me, that's fun. It makes me realize I've converted another group to the halls of D&D players, and I think it makes being a DM really rewarding. Question number 3, are you currently DMing or playing in any campaigns? And also talk about any characters you have. So because of the pandemic, all of my campaigns have ended, but as I mentioned at the top of the video, I am currently getting my D&D fix by planning and designing my own campaign that I will DM once it is safe to gather in groups again. As for characters I have one of my characters here. Here she is. This is the first character I ever played. She's a halfling. I always play halflings mainly because they have a trait where they're lucky, so they get to re-roll any natural ones on the 20-sided dice. And I personally find I get more enjoyment out of playing Dungeons & Dragons when I know my chances of critically failing are way less than 5%. But yeah, she's a halfling. Her name was Cora, and she was a bard. If halflings are my favorite race, then bards are definitely my favorite class. You can see she's got a little violin. Her actual instrument was the bagpipes though, and she was such a sweetheart. Her main goal in life was she wanted to find a hero that she could kind of assign herself to and write stories and poems and songs for. My DM actually 3D printed and painted this little mini for me for the campaign, and I have suspicions that my DM's plan for my character was to have her eventually realize that, you know, she didn't need to write songs about other heroes, that she could be the hero she wrote songs about, you know, finding self-worth, etc. But I only ever got her to level 5 because it was a college campaign and people graduated and moved away, but I will always keep this mini. I will always love her. I'll always remember my first ever character. Question number 4 is, do you have any superstitions when you play D&D, specifically about dice or anything like that? I know a very common one is whenever your dice seem to be rolling badly, you put them in a dice jail until they learn their lesson. But I'm kind of on the opposite end of that. Whenever I make a character, I always create a dice palette for them. I pick out dice out of a small collection I have, and I just have to make sure each dice perfectly matches my character's personality. So for example, my character I was playing before the pandemic began was a wild magic sorcerer. She was also a halfling called Cassiopeia. Her eyes were this really dark muddy green, but whenever her magic went out of control, they would flare kind of an electric green. So my dice set was just a mix of all different shades of green. And then I also had these two really vibrant electric greens that I had to roll whenever her wild magic surged. Circling back to Superstition after that tangent, it didn't matter how poorly my dice for her were rolling. To me, I just associate that as being part of that character's fate. I do not touch other players' dice, and I especially don't make a roll with dice that don't match the color aesthetic of my character, because I feel like those dice then aren't really attached to that character's fate, and so it's like you're messing with the fates. Yeah, I would say that's pretty much a superstition. And the last question, question number 5 in this section of the tag is, do you watch any D&D related shows? So I don't think you can have been part of this hobby without at least having heard of Critical Role. I am a critter absolutely through and through. I have been watching since about 2017. Thursday nights are sacrosanct to me. I always tune in, and to be honest, Critical Role and like AuthorTube are probably my 2 main sources of visual entertainment. I have listened to some D&D podcasts. I listen to The Adventure Zone. I don't listen religiously though, but I also really enjoy the D&D group called Girls Guts Glory. It's an all-female campaign, and they are on Twitch, but I know them through their YouTube videos that they put out, where they kind of take their sessions and they condense them down into smaller chunks. And then they add sound effects and all these other kind of post-production things to amp up the drama of the videos, which I think is a nice touch. The person who plays a bard actually will play an instrument whenever her character plays an instrument, and they all dress up as their characters, and I just think it's great fun. I'll link all the things I've mentioned below just in case you want to go check any of them out. Just FYI, they're in the description. All right, so that was the D&D related section, specific section I should say, and now we're getting into the 5 writing questions that have a D&D twist. Question number 1 is the DM question. What is your favorite part about world building? So my favorite part of world building as a DM and with D&D in mind is kind of the geography aspect. I love looking at a continent and thinking, oh, you know, 2 tectonic plates would be meeting here, so there's either going to be a mountain range or a rift valley or something like that. It's very much a big scale kind of way of thinking. But for writing, I think I enjoy kind of a smaller scale way of thinking. I really like to think about how the environment immediately surrounding my character would shape them and affect them. And so yeah, it's definitely on a smaller scale in my personal writing. Question number 2 is the player question. What is your favorite part about character creation? I love a puzzle of a character. I love how they start off as this shifting abstract idea in my mind, but as I continue to ruminate on them, they solidify before me. And then I love thinking about how they will change over the course of the story and how they're going to feel even more real on that last page than they could have ever felt on that first page. I just in general love a good arc. I'm horrible at writing them, but I love them all the same. Question number 3 is roll for initiative. Are you a pantser or a plotter? So I used to think I was a pantser, and I am still a pantser, but recently I've been thinking maybe I need to switch up this strategy, because it has literally taken me 5 years to edit and fix a story I pantsed in 2015. Question number 4 is the death saving throw. How likely are you to kill off a character? I would say I'm actually highly unlikely to do this for 2 reasons. The first reason is that in general, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. And the second reason is that the kind of stories I have written up to this point at least don't really end with big battles or, you know, overthrowing a government. I don't really often write stories of the scale in which my main characters will be in mortal peril at the end. Although I should say, with like a major caveat and kind of a smile of irony, that my current project literally starts with all of my characters in a life or death situation, fully in mortal peril, and someone does die. So know thyself, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. The very final question in the D&D writing tag is question number 5, the natural 20. What is your biggest writing success to date? So writing a book in of itself is obviously a massive success, but I would say that my biggest success is actually sharing my work with others, or at least gaining the courage to share it with others. The reason it has taken me 5 years on Project EC was because I was keeping it very close to the chest for a very long time, and it wasn't until I allowed my sister to give me her full thoughts on it that I was really able to take it into the levels that I wanted it to be. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, not even close, but I'm so much prouder of the draft I have today than the draft I wrote for the very first time, which is why I think biggest success is definitely having courage to share it with others and having the courage to accept their critiques. And that's the D&D tag. Let me know down in the comments your answers to any of these questions, and specifically let me know if your hobbies inform your writing ever, because I swear all I need to do is play a single session of D&D and I cannot wait to get to my computer and just release all that creative energy and write. I am going to tag Crystal from Crystal Cluster Gaming and Tash from the channel Truly Tash because I'm pretty sure they both play D&D. But if you love to write and you love Dungeons and Dragons and you make YouTube videos, then I tag you too. And I look forward to watching your answers. But for now, go be happy, go be healthy, and go write. And go play Dungeons and Dragons because it's literally the best game ever. It's so good.